welcome to working with elected officials at the ACM Conference 2023 here in beautiful Brooklyn, New York City. We are, as community media centers, providing important public services that promote civic awareness, community engagement, voter literacy, workforce development, voter literacy, and more. And as we seek to build partnerships and support, as well as for our advocacy initiatives in the public policy front, this really, these services really, it can be a big part of that goal of, whether it be a public policy goal of getting a bill passed or getting a capital allocation or getting funding for some of the programming or educational services. It's important narratives that can be shared in our work. And we have a distinguished panel today from various media centers, as well as from an organization that works with nonprofits. And before we introduce our distinguished panelists from Brookline TV, Naleo TV, MNN, and from the Lawyers Alliance, we're going to take a look at some of what these community media centers do, including BronxNet. I'm Michael Maxnabi, the executive director of BronxNet Television, and I'll be moderating today's panel. Public access and community media centers like BronxNet contribute to informed and engaged communities and positive social change every day. Pioneers like George Stoney, and in the Bronx, the Honorable Fernando Ferrer, recognized early on the importance of independent voices and communities representing themselves, activism and accuracy. The Bronx in particular was misrepresented. BronxNet exists in part to correct those misrepresentations and provide access to you so you can tell your story. Your voice, your views, your vision matters. And we've built studios, channels, multimedia platforms, and services. BronxNet is working with our community leaders, as well as with local organizations, and you to help bridge that divide.
When you think about this new media and technology center, when you think about video animation, media production, journalism, producing, filming, think about all the careers that will come out of this space.
Your vision, your voice, your perspective matters, whether you're running for office or you want to be an engaged citizen and you want to know where the candidates stand on the issues and you want to know what issues affect where and how you live right now. What's at stake? Well, that's what you're going to find out on BronxNet Television. That's what you're going to find out on any community media center, wherever you live in this great nation. You're going to find local information, a wealth of local information, as well as an invitation to participate. BronxNet is your open work. Your voice, your views, your vision matters. And BronxNet has built multimedia platforms, studios, technologies, as well as channels for you to participate, because together we are BronxNet and together we are stronger.
Aloha and welcome. Naleo TV is Hawaii Island's public access television station, channels 53, 54, and 55. We invite you to learn about all of the resources that we have to offer, both in Hilo and Kona. Our main studio is here in Hilo. This is our reception area, where you'll be greeted by our client services team. Anne and JE will be here to help you with all of your client services needs.
Once you become an external producer, you will be able to reserve audio and video equipment to start filming your own program. Right next door is our mini studio, where you can record in a quiet setting. As an external producer, you also can reserve our edit bays, which are fully equipped with top-of-the-line video editing software to complete your program. Once you complete your project, fill out a playback form and give it to client services to submit your program.
Just like our facility in Hilo, our facility in Kona has all the resources you need.
Here at our Kona facility, Richard and Scott will be able to help you with everything you need. Our staff is like an ohana, and we are always working to serve our community in every area and as best as we can.
Media is everything right now, so if you have the skills to create media, you basically have the world in your hands. MNN, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, gives you the tools to make something bigger. How to set up a camera, finding out how to interview people. We got an editing lesson, learning about production. We were ready to start producing our own stuff.
It's an intensive 6 weeks, completely free, making sure that they know the latest technology when it comes to video. But the focus of our program is to make sure that the young people learn critical thinking.
We provide training in the technical, the creative, and the social aspects of making media through a social justice lens. Providing youth with a camera, anybody can do that. But if you don't teach them the why it's important and how they can use that as a weapon for themselves and for their communities, then it doesn't go anywhere.
We're creating a short documentary about Seeds of Liberation. We were trying to get to know what Seeds of Liberation meant. We talked about past movements. Some movements are happening now.
En los cursos que he tomado me han enseñado producción en el estudio, utilizando las cámaras robóticas y producción de campo o grabando alrededor de la comunidad.
Aparte de las enseñanzas de filming que ellos nos implantan, ellos también nos enseñan algo que ha pasado antes con nuestra comunidad, con nuestra cultura. Un ejemplo es lo que fue el John Lord, que fue un movimiento boricua, como fue el movimiento de Black Panther.
They realize that they can tell their own stories as opposed to having somebody else tell it for them.
You see the young person come in the first day, after 6 weeks, you see the complete transformation. They will never see television the same. We listen to what they have to say.
Yo quiero, o cuando yo termine de la escuela, hacer una carrera profesional de filming, para yo poder trabajar en los medios de comunicación.
Just produce something that's interesting and something that's positive. People are always trying to watch things, so they'll be motivated because you did something positive.
This intersection of the arts and lots of other important uses of media. Brookline Interactive Group is the way that we in our community in Brookline can continue to have access to events and access to ideas and access to conversations that simply can't happen in any other way. If you believe in Brookline, I think you got to believe in Brookline Interactive Group.
There's no better time to have community media. So many of us with the pandemic, I feel we're like, oh, I haven't tapped into this, or oh, I'm actually very good at baking bread, or I actually am a great musician. And those kinds of things you can now have a whole show on, or a podcast. If their community is able to facilitate them having professional quality videos, that gives those people in the town agency to accomplish their projects.
You know, at one point was doing videos as a chair of the executive board. So I was, trying to tinker, and I realized I really needed to learn more than just these YouTube videos and these tutorials online, as great as they might be. And of course, BIG came to mind, Brookline Interactive Group, because they're so much more than just showing us town meeting, right? They have a ton of classes and online programs, and walked me through the mechanics of how do you use more video editing software, help demystify some of what the acronyms mean, and how to use things, to the point where I was able to record a bunch of videos with my children and family. And then I felt that they were good enough that I actually posted them on YouTube and shared them when I was running for president-elect of the American Public Health Association. So I learned so much about video editing that I can still take that as a skill.
A good friend should do. I thank you for being you. Have a great rest of your day, friends. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank our Director of Community Affairs at BronxNet and an ACM board member, Audrey Duncan, for organizing today's discussion. And please join me in welcoming our panelists for today. It is Hawaii County Council member Ashley Kirkowitz, the Deputy Director of Brookline Interactive, Heather Hamilton. And by the way, it's kind of a unique perspective that Heather and Ashley will bring into today's discussion, because Ashley is also the president and the CEO of Naleo TV, and Heather is a former council member in Brookline. So that's a great perspective. And joining us also with best practices and really legal awareness around advocacy is a great organization that we've utilized from the Lawyers Alliance, staff attorney Rafi Stern. Rafi Stern, staff attorney Rafi Stern. And then you know her, you've seen her all across this great city and state and nation. Her name is Zenaida Mendez, the director of El Barrio M&N Firehouse, and she is a tremendous advocate as well. And if you would, please introduce yourselves, each one of you, and share a little bit about why you think it's important for elected officials and community media centers to work together, in whatever order you'd like. Why don't you start, Ashley?
Sure. Aloha kako. My name is Ashley Kirkowitz. I am addicted to public service as a council member and 2 weeks on the job as president and CEO of Naleo TV. Naleo is one of 4 pegs that serves the state of Hawaii. Yesterday, someone mentioned pegs being community anchor institutions, and that really resonated with me. We have an opportunity, I see, of having these spaces be points of connection, of pegs being conveners as we think about broadband connectivity and ensuring that all members of our community have access. These are media labs, innovation hubs, workforce development incubators, and a place to bring people together and make sure that every single voice has the ability to be heard, and that stories that don't often get told can be told and shared with the broader community.
Hi, my name is Heather Hamilton. I hail from the great state of Massachusetts, Brookline, and I'm a recovering politician, but let me tell you a little bit about my journey to then and now. So I always knew that I wanted to run for public office. Since I was 3, I knew I wanted to be an elected, but I always assumed that it would be after I got married, after I raised my kids, you know, when I had time and I knew stuff that, like, you know, you're supposed to know. So that got upended in 2016 when I didn't see what I thought was going to be our first female president. And I ended up running a lot sooner than I anticipated. And one of the things, you know, I'm a political junkie. I'm definitely, you know, all in with community. But one of the things that you really aren't prepared for, no matter how much background you have in it, is how much we rely on volunteer form of government. Not a lot of it gets attention. We concentrate on U.S. Congress, but we don't really pay attention to the local level. And so many of our communities have outgrown this volunteer forward style of government. And I found myself really pulled in a lot of different directions. I was chair of our select board for a town that really is a city. It's 64,000 residents, and trying to do that with completely volunteers and 5 people basically disagreeing, and then you have to post any deliberation 48 hours in advance was a joke during the pandemic. You didn't have the time. The further I got into this rabbit hole, unpaid, I don't have a safety net. I was sacrificing, my income. My job suffered. I suffered mentally. And so I was approached a couple of times while I was on the board by our local access media, Brookline Interactive. They covered our government meetings. I didn't really pay all that much attention until they said, hey, would you be willing to get some of your electeds together and just help us film a scene from our crowdsource? We're doing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you can be part of the parade scene. And I'm like, where do I sign? So the biggest plug I can make is if you don't know your electeds, they love being on camera. So just give them the opportunity.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rafi Stern. I'm a staff attorney at Lawyers Alliance for New York. I work in the Economic Opportunity Program area, and we work with a huge variety of nonprofit clients, including community television. And, we have such an array of organizations that want to lobby government in all different ways and on all different subjects. And nonprofits, some people don't even realize that 501c3 nonprofits are allowed to lobby. There are limitations. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that today so that you can hopefully leave this with some general idea of what you are and are not allowed to do. And the ability to follow up about any questions that get into the weeds and into the nuance. So thanks for having me.
Hello, I'm Zenaida Mendez, and I came about Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I was very active in my Community Board 4 in Health Kitchen, Manhattan. And when Ruth Messenger was the Manhattan Board President, I have already a show in MNN, and I was also very involved in the community. So she asked me to be on the board. So I was one of the nominees for the Manhattan Board President. The board Manhattan Neighborhood in 1992. And after that, I worked for David Dinkins when he was Manhattan Borough President and when he was the mayor. So I know a lot about legislation. I know how government works due to those experiences. 4 years with Congressman Charles Rangel and 8 years with David Dinkins. And I love public access. I mean, every elected official in New York City have a show with us. Nobody covered the local debates the way we do. So I encourage everyone is to check each one of us, including Lawyers Alliance, because they keep us on check, which is very important. So we will talk about what we are doing currently with legislator in Albany and many of this legislation. Everything that we know that we do is politics. Tell people. When you decide to go to school, is politics. When you decide to go shopping, is politics. So you go to a mall and they don't treat you correctly, you tell everyone in the neighborhood, don't go to that mall, right? That's politics. And in New York City in particular, every corner, every building is politics. In my building, everybody go. So it's 400 apartments, I get everybody there, from the congressman to the mayor.
Thank you. Outstanding. And as you looked at some of the highlights from each of the community media centers represented here, I mean, you saw elected officials walking through the doors on tours of the media centers. You saw voter literacy programs like debates and candidate forums. and interviews where the elected officials are coming in. And these are opportunities to give a tour to the elected officials, to show the community media programming in action, the students training and the work we do. Zenaida and Heather, how do you get government officials to understand what you do?
To us, it's pretty easier. I think we start when they're running for office. So we follow them in the neighborhood and the district, make sure that we invite them to have debates, and everything from the time that they're activists. I mean, some of them never get to be so active, but we make sure that people know about it, and that's how we get them involved. We also have a program called NYC Represent. So the entire Manhattan delegation have a spot. They want to showcase what they're doing. Like I said, right now we're going to have a town hall with Senator Clear at the end of this month. So they call us also. The other day, I was in a restaurant and Congressman Espaillat came to me and said, last night I got home at 1 o'clock in the morning. Somebody said, I just saw you on television. Everything. So, and also I feel that we are more relevant than ever. So that's how people get the message out. That's how elected officials get the message out to the neighborhood. And now they know, they announce it in the newsletter, so they know what we're doing. And they also want everybody to go for them. So we keep them in check, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Brookline Interactive Group, I can't say enough good things about what this organization is doing, and that is part of the reason why I resigned to join this organization. One of the things that was very frustrating being, an elected of a, very large corporation, for lack of a better term, is that government just really sucks at getting its message out, because it really requires people to be active, like seeking out information. They rely too heavily on their website. Some of the department heads are better than others about putting out social media, but we don't have the resources to do a reverse 911 on everything. We save that for snowstorms and when trash pickup gets moved. Otherwise, you get complaints. So one of the things that really came about through the pandemic was Brookline Interactive Group came to the town and said, we want to work with you. We want to help you elevate your message. And they did. Like, they were willing to provide any recorded government meeting, and we have many. We have probably 50 committees. So they said, just send us the Zoom file. We'll put it on our channels. And that was tremendous, not only from a government standpoint, but as a resident standpoint. We were all thirsty for information and, what's going on in the community, and seeing how other people were trying to navigate this very unsettling new reality.
Thank you. And yesterday was primary election day in New York City. And in the Bronx, there was a race for district attorney. And BronxNet was the only forum for a debate for that race. So we were featured in the New York Times and other places. Very often, it's our centers that are covering these local races, interviewing the candidates, and sharing what the local issues are. So it's so important. And Ashley, you articulated so wonderfully the value of community media. How did you come to understand that value?
Thank you. So I ran for office in 2018. And at that moment, I had no idea, but our community would experience an unprecedented and historic volcanic eruption. I represent the community that is recovering from that eruption. And prior to being on the council, I had worked for nearly a decade in public relations, so got on-the-ground experience on how to develop communication and media strategies, develop content. And I thought, when I run for office, I want to be the kind of council member that shows up for my community and breaks information down, because information is a tool of empowerment, and people need to know, so that way they can make decisions, informed decisions about their households. And so my first exposure to Naleo was running for office. All candidates were invited in to do a little candidate debate. And I thought, holy smokes, this is in my backyard. This is like the best kept secret in community. If I ever had the opportunity to work here, I want to make sure that every single person on this island knows Naleo is here for them. Naleo means the voice. And so it is really our mandate to make sure that we are elevating these local voices. When I was in office, we had opportunities to be able to kind of share what was going on in our districts. And so made sure to leverage those as much as possible. And some of the work that I am doing on the council is now informing my approach in engaging community in this new capacity at Naleo. About 6 months into my first term in office, I am a big fan of public art. And I knew the mental toll and strain and stress that the eruption had on community, particularly youth. And the community I represent, there are high rates of suicide and suicide attempts. And I just felt that our kids, they weren't being engaged, they weren't being supported. And so I engaged a local and globally recognized artist. His name is Kai Kalukukui. You can find him on Instagram at Artwork of Kai. He actually went to the school that we were reaching out to, Pahoa High and Intermediate. And I asked Kai to go and talk to the kids about what it means to be Puna strong. What about your community you are proud of? What makes us resilient? Because we survived 2 lava flows. And what was so shocking were the questions these kids asked of the artist. Why are you at my school? Why aren't you at a better school? If you could live anywhere else, where would it be? These kids had no connection to their community. None. They didn't feel supported. They didn't feel a sense of belonging. But over the engagement with the artist and seeing I can make money painting with art that expose them to new ideas and opportunities. And that's what I want to bring to Naleo. I want to make sure that our kids, our community are exposed to different tools, technology, AI, so that they can make sure that the negative headlines that are often associated with our community are not the only stories that exist, but now community members, youth in particular, have the ability, have the power to amplify their perspective.
Thank you. We're keeping all cities strong, all communities strong. And in New York State, we're working together to build broad support for an important bill that will ensure for the future of community media called the Community Media Reinvestment Act. Concurrently in Congress, a committee just pushed out this bill, which will be very harmful to community media should it go further in Congress, in the House, and in the Senate. Rafi, what should community media centers, what should people who are seeking to protect community voices and enhance our services for 21st century access, what should community media centers keep in mind as we seek to affect policy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm going to give sort of a high-level overview, and I emphasize high level because there is some nuance to what I'm going to describe. But I guess first, I just wanted to ask if I can see how many people here work at 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Okay, does anyone work at a 501c4? And it's okay if you don't know. Okay, I see one back there. That's good. And anyone work at a for-profit organization? Okay, great. A few. Okay, great. So that there are different rules for different organizations, and so that's worth keeping in mind. And I'll say also, if you have questions after this, Lawyers Alliance focuses primarily on New York City, but we do have a resource call hotline, and I think we're going to put my email up at the end. People should feel free to reach out with high-level questions. Like this presentation, we can't give legal advice without obviously a retainer letter, but on our resource call hotline, we do try to provide general legal information, links, other information that can help you get on the right track. So I'm going to focus primarily on 501c3 organizations. That's where most of you work. That's the federal tax designation for a public charity. 501c3 organizations, unlike, for example, for-profits or 501c4s, are flatly banned from doing political activity. Now, people might think, what is political activity? How is that defined? There's a 15-page IRS document that goes into the different things that can constitute political activity. But in a nutshell, It's basically, endorsing a political candidate or otherwise actively promoting, someone who's running for political office. So that is a big no-no as a 501c3, right? That's the kind of activity that can imperil your organization's status, particularly if it's done on an ongoing basis. What nonprofits can do is they can lobby. And there are limitations on the amount you can lobby, but you are allowed to lobby. And lobbying, as distinguished from political activity, is basically speaking with elected officials, encouraging them to, pass acts that promote community television or do anything else, whether that's funding programs, changing legislation. There's, again, sort of a long list of what can be lobbying, but that is the basics of it. Obviously, if you have a question about whether you're lobbying or not, it's best to consult a lawyer. The amount of lobbying that nonprofits can do, again, there is not necessarily a hard and fast test. 501c3s can only do an insubstantial amount of their activity as lobbying. It's probably not a problem for most of you because doing media is your main activity, right? We have clients at Lawyers Alliance who want to sort of push the envelope. Most of what they do is lobbying, or a large part of what they do. And we have to work with them around that. But, for the most part, if you're primarily running a television station and then you want to do a lobby day in Albany or in another state capital, or of course in DC, that is lobbying, but is probably not going to be problematic for your organization. If your organization is doing a sustained amount of lobbying, you are required to keep track of that. So there should be someone designated at your organization whose job is keeping track of the amount of time and resources in terms of money that the organization is spending on lobbying. This is important because you have to report it on your IRS Form 990. And it's also important because at the state level, states regulate lobbying too. So that's generally, states have the power to regulate their own state government. So in New York, that's if you're lobbying in Albany, and there's a separate law if you're lobbying in New York City. Not a lot of cities have that, but New York does. I obviously won't go into the different rules for the 50 states, but the states have different definitions of lobbying. So I described the federal definition. In New York, the definition is largely the same at the state level, but in some states it's not. In New York, if you just visit with a legislator, perhaps show them around your facility, and you're not lobbying for a specific bill, you're not lobbying, right? You're allowed to welcome legislators onto your facility without doing lobbying. In some states, just sort of mingling with legislators, being around them, being in conversation with them can constitute lobbying. So I think with that, I'll turn it back to everyone else, but that's sort of a high level summary of what you should be keeping in mind as you go about, advocating on behalf of your organizations, which you should be doing. Lawyers Alliance also has recorded webinars on this subject. So if you go to our website, there are sort of hour-long presentations where you can get a lot more detail. And of course, you can feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, Rafi. And Heather and Zenaida, how has working with elected officials benefited your media center? And Ashley, how has working with community media centers, when you as an elected official, benefited your constituents?
I guess I'll jump in. Okay. So our state rep actually has a weekly program. He was featured in the video, Tommy Vitolo. He calls it TV on TV. And, local elected officials have supporters, have people who have donated money. So by having a weekly program on our channel, his supporters want to see that content. He puts that in his newsletter that has, I'm sure, an audience of 2,000 people. And then they go to our website and then they look at other programming that we have. It does not hurt to have his ear. He is now one of our members, so he understands what it is that we do, and he understands the limitation when something breaks down because we haven't had enough money to replace it. So that's been great. I was a local elected, and ARPA funding is one of these like once in a generation opportunities. And having someone on staff that understands the thinking behind how that money is allocated and awarded and who's likely to support certain activities on the board helps.
Definitely. Let me tell you a short story. We have a independent producer who have a salsa show, music show in our channel, but he happened to be very good friend with Eric Adams. So guess what? Eric Adams came to the channel before he got elected. When he was in campaign, Johnny was inviting him to his show, and he came, and he's very familiar also with Rick, and he used to have a program here. Gail Brewer, who's a long-time city council, she also was Manhattan Borough president. I think he's our longest independent producer. So she has a weekly show. And so always referring, sending young people to us. They know exactly the importance of what we do. And that's really, really good. And like I mentioned, we also have a representing NYC, so we give a seat to all the elected officials. We do not interview them, but what they do is they invite guests to the show. Whatever topic they want to talk about, like this one is gun violence, so we covered Robert Jackson up in Washington Heights. We did a big event about gun prevention. He also had a big event because the subway in 168th Street, so if you are familiar with the station, have an elevator where people take the elevator down to take the train. So if the MTA want to take away the staff, they manage the elevator. And there is a lot of situation going there. So it's at a big event. People didn't know about this, so we announced it, we covered the press conference. So we were able to at least have MTA reconsider what they were going to do about that and give the people a chance to really discuss this and have an input. So those are the in general, I think that during the pandemic, during COVID-19, without public access, I don't know how this city would have run, because we would go live almost every day, twice a day in town hall. You know, we're all the elected official and all the community groups, letting them know whether people can go and get food, whether people can go and get the vaccine, all kind of information. Because all the churches, and all the activists, I mean, it was incredible what happened in those 2 years. At the same time, you know, like organizations like Home Community, who does, they do low-income housing. They have the gala every year. They were able to have the gala virtually with us. People didn't even notice that they were not in the boardroom. And the same thing with the New York Women in Film Television. They had the big gala, you know, from our studio. It was incredible. They have people from Hollywood, they have people from everywhere. And like I said, when you go and see that fundraising, you will never think there was virtually. So because also is what we do is that technology. So the people, the community people who take classes with us are learning how to run everything. You know, they can go in the studio, they can do the audio board, they can go in the master control. So that's a job there. You know, they can pursue if they want to do more. But this is, I think that, so all the elected officials, particularly, I know Bronx Strong does it, and Manhattan do it too.
So again, I'm in a really unique position given my role as an elected official and now head of our local community media center. And there's tremendous opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about the things that we are going to do because again, I'm 2 weeks on the job, doing the staff assessments, really understanding where we can go. And why me being there is so important is over the last few years, there's been a lot of instability in leadership. And so now they're happy to have somebody that's rooted in community and able to provide not just stability, but vision and direction working for the organization. And we are going to be doing a lot of really incredible things and opening up the space. There's just so many opportunities to be able to tell stories of resilience, and then document history, conversations with kupuna or elders in our community before they're gone, and those treasured stories of the past are forgotten. We are going to continue to empower local residents to tell their own stories. We have a certified producers program. I'm currently evaluating it and figuring out how do we make sure that folks actually get over the finish line and produce a program. Because we have a lot of producers, but I'm not seeing any content. So we're having conversations with our producers to understand, what do you need? One of the things we found out, they need tips and tricks on lighting. So we hosted a workshop. 22 out of 25 folks showed up, and they're like, you know what? I didn't want to submit anything because I wasn't sure how to get the lighting right, but now I do. And so we are going to be expecting programs, but that was another place for community members to come together and collaborate on projects. With my council member hat on, and prior to coming on to Naleo, but it's very relevant for this discussion, our office is working with an education technology group called Purple Mai'a. Mai'a is banana in Hawaiian, and purple bananas are very rare. Only Hawaiian women could eat them in the past. We are doing a 3-day event called Kanaka Creators, Kukai, and it is meant to connect community members with each other, with the land, and to dabble in a hybrid frontier. And so over the course of 3 days, we are going to be immersing residents and youth in a historic fishing village, letting them know and opening up historical stories, chants, and songs, and equipping them with tools, design tools, AI, so that they can bring these stories to visual life and create a very multi-sensory and immersive experience. And these are very important skills and tools and knowledge for our residents to have, because society is shifting. It's increasingly more tech. And these community media centers can play a leading edge role in making sure that we're providing the space for people to be curious and dabble and create together, create responsibly. We're also looking at doing various community collaborations. So many good things are happening in our community, but also a lot of challenges that I think that community media centers can help elevate and solve for. We're going to be collaborating with our Hawaii Island Community Health Center. There is a shortage of physicians and healthcare workers on the island. So doing little exposés around day in the life of a registered nurse or a doctor to plant seeds around the importance of these jobs, but also spark in some of our community members the opportunities that exist. We're going to be collaborating with our Big Island Press Club, which is a cohort of retired and active journalists in our community, and have them teach members of our community and youth participatory journalism. With all the money behind big media and corporations, we want to make sure that our people are empowered to be able to tell stories on their terms. So that's going to be really exciting. And then a collaboration with the Hawaii Historic Foundation, which has incredible archives of photos and video. We can bring that to life. We can bring that to life using virtual and augmented reality. So many opportunities. If you are ever in Hawaii, please come check us out, because these are things that we are actively working on.
That's great. And yeah, it's really making sure that we're visible in the community. We're on the ground telling the stories of our communities, but also, where our cameras are there, when our elected officials are there, when our people are there, we're there for the people that we serve, and that we're kind of mutual allies. There's affinities between our work and government in so many ways. And is there any other thoughts here on going forward? And we do want to leave enough time for a Q&A. So right now, if there's any other kind of final thoughts, please share, and then we're going to open it up to the floor.
I also want to mention that the Federal Communication Commission, the monitor everything that we do, didn't pay a lot of attention to community media until we started going to DC. We met with the commissioner, and we do it often. We had invited them to our channel. They had come to our facility in New York, particularly 3 or 4 of them. So now they see the importance of what we do. So it's all the layers connect us to the importance of working with our elected official. So when we go talk to our congressperson, our senator here in the city, who they come often to our facility, they can also carry the message to the Federal Communication Commission when all these other, the few times that I did there, I have to tell you, it's like 200 white men dressed in suits lobbying for corporation. And it's like 2 or 3 of us. I think the first time that they saw a woman of color, with big accent, and one of those men was me, like 10 years ago. So this is, it's whatever you can do. It's the same thing when you pay your telephone bill. Just look at what you are paying. You can also demand that, that they continue to public access television.
Yeah, I guess, I know everyone comes from all over the country here. And obviously, like I said, Lawyers Alliance is focused on New York, but I think I'll finish with just shouting out a few national resources that might be helpful to people. Lawyers Alliance is part of a national organization called Exponentum. That's also on our website, but it's kind of our sister organizations in other cities around the country that provide, free pro bono legal advice to nonprofits like yourselves. And then as far as the lobbying piece, I know I said all 50 states have different lobbying rules. And, we work mostly with New York, some New Jersey and Connecticut. But there are really 2 resources you can check out. They don't have every state on them, but one is Boulder Advocacy. We use that a lot in our practice. And then there's a newer resource called the Democracy Capacity Project. And those both have a lot of state and local resources that, again, I guess it's easy to say as a lawyer, it's best to consult with an actual attorney. But, if you're doing a small amount of lobbying or you just want to get your bearings, those are good places to go.
Oh gosh, advice. I will say this. Politics is about relationships. And politicians move on, and institutions don't have institutional knowledge. As soon as those people walk out the door, those relationships go with them. So don't put all your eggs in that basket. I mean, you definitely should cultivate those relationships. Those people bring donors and they bring an audience. But relying very heavily on relationships with government officials for your primary funding is a mistake. And you really need to think long-term about making yourself sustainable without relying on institutions that do not have your best interest at heart.
Okay, wrapping up here. Invite your elected officials in and make sure that you document everything you do so you can continuously show value. Sometimes you will need financial support for capital improvements, or you have an innovative idea regarding, media and workforce development. Make them your allies and keep in touch with them. Put them on your newsletter list. That way they can see everything that you're doing. I made a list of things here that I thought would be really helpful to folks. You might already be doing this, but it's helpful for me in my exercise as leading this organization in making sure that we are ensuring that there is continued collaboration between our PEG and our local government. Having PSAs regularly. It's going to be election year for our state next year. So making sure folks are equipped about voter registration, knowing that it's all mail-in voting, and where to go in order to register. We are also in hurricane season in the state of Hawaii, so doing PSAs around disaster preparedness, your go bag, and making sure all of your important documents are scanned up into the cloud. And so just having these public service announcements, I think, are a great way to collaborate. Again, the candidate forums might be the only times in which voters are exposed to folks they're going to be able to choose from to advocate on their behalf in local government. So having those candidate forums are a way to engage voters. More public affair programming, interviews with local elected officials to understand what are they working on? What are their policy initiatives? And encouraging ongoing dialogue with constituents so that members of the community are able to share any concerns or any questions that they might have. Again, voter education and literacy, talking to folks about the local electoral process because it's different in every single county. Convening town hall meetings, right? It's not enough for elected officials to just be in their office. They have to be out in community. And when you have a regular schedule of town hall meetings, they got to show up and be able to talk about something. So having that available to them and having the PEGs cover them will be really valuable. Collaborative outreach campaigns. Again, a lot of important messages to get out there about public safety, public health, environmental preservation, and stewardship. Lots happening in local government. They may not always be the best at getting the information out there. So this is another natural collaboration. Workforce development. There's so much that can be done in our pegs with media, getting behind the camera, editing, journalism, media production. Giving folks this hands-on experience is going to be phenomenal. And then everything that we do has to have a social media component to it. It's not enough to just broadcast on the cable TV channels, but folks are consuming information everywhere. So everything that we do, making sure that it's reaching audiences across social media platforms.
Thank you. And in the Bronx, we collaborate with our Bronx Borough President, Vanessa L. Gibson, on great initiatives like Bronx Week, which celebrates Bronx Walk of Famers, folks that are internationally renowned, who grew up in the Bronx, as well as broadcasting live the State of the Borough Address and much, much more. So how about a round of applause for our amazing panelists here? And engagement is at the heart of what we all do. So the floor is open to you. Please introduce yourself and ask a question. Yes.
Hi, Meg Andrews, working with Hudson Community TV over in Ohio. I actually work for the government, but the thing is, our community TV, whenever we try to go and talk to our government officials, they don't want to be on TV. What would you say to that, or how would we try to coerce them into actually being on camera?
Are they camera shy?
I'm guessing possibly, but at the same time, sometimes they just don't want to talk about things.
Well, I would get a group in the community who will force them to talk.
Yeah. I mean, I get where they're coming from, because I did something kind of I wouldn't say stupid, but risky. My first year on the job, I ushered in shared electric scooters, those bird and lime things. And I was not very popular at the senior center for a while. And the chair of the board at the time said, "I'm not going to take these media inquiries. That's you." And, I was worried that I was going to be faced with a gotcha moment. So what you might do is sit down and provide the list of questions or topics ahead of time, and then they cultivate a trust where they don't feel like they're going to be put on the spot. That's probably what they're the most worried about. You can start with a PSA where they're given a script and kind of coach them along.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, elected officials are expected to know everything. Yeah. And I often have to field inquiries about things that are state and federal, which is kind of crazy. But as Heather was saying, I think it's really important to just bring them in and create a really friendly environment, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They want to make sure that they are speaking responsibly and intelligently and providing accurate and factual information. That is their job to do. And so what you could do is you could show them examples of shows you're trying to create and do a workshop. Invite all the elected officials to come and say, this is what we're planning to do. This is the flow. These are all of the questions. They could all even be there together to record a session. But that way you're getting everybody comfortable and on board with what you're looking to do.
I was just going to add, it's always encouraging to hear from an elected official that their first ever interview as a student was with BronxNet. And many of our elected officials, at some level were either interns at BronxNet or, and they have, fond memories of it. So it is cultivating a trust. And I really like the idea of doing, communications workshops. And we do that for the business community. And certainly that makes sense to translate that over to electeds. And I saw a question, I saw a hand shoot up over here and over here. Yes.
I had the same question that you did to add potentially to it a bit. That the communities that I serve are comparatively very small. Some of our cities still have dirt roads and cows and farms. That their view of the media, when you say media, they say it's the big scare. Oh, the bad media. They're gonna say the wrong thing. They're gonna portray us in a certain light. When I'm literally sitting in front of them with a microphone, saying, "Well, then you tell me. Put it in your words. Say your words." And they still shy away from it. I don't know if it's a small town thing or what, but it's definitely a frustration that I have when working with local officials.
Don't give up. Continuously show up. We have 2 facilities on our island, but I represent a very rural community, very similar to what you described. I've told my team, put together a list and a budget of what it will mean to take Naleo on the road. We have to go to community. We have to go to events. We have to have little pop-up tents and capture what folks are feeling and thinking and just worried about or excited about in terms of the future. I'm also really excited about democratizing things with our phone. I've asked my team to put together a list of what it would mean to do a production with your phone, because we know that most folks are equipped with this, but they might need a tripod and lighting and a mic. And so then we can go out into community schools I'm targeting and teach students how to responsibly put together stories. That way you continuously have programs, and now you have folks in the community that others trust and talk to. They might not know you, but if you continuously show up, they'll build that relationship with you. But it's important to start with folks that they know and they trust first.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. One, it only takes one, right? So like find that first person, and usually it doesn't take long for other people to kind of follow that leader. So, find that one person. The other thing that I would say, the reason why I gravitated away from being, a politician, a volunteer who was expected to be a lawyer, a press secretary, like a subject matter expert in everything, on nights and weekends, was I wasn't having fun. And a lot of what we get to do can be fun. And so, okay, maybe they don't want to be on camera. Maybe you find out if they have pets or a cow, and then you do like a voiceover. Like, make it fun, especially if it's a small town. Like, I'm sure that there is an animal that everybody knows and loves. Like, make that a mascot with like a voice.
So there's a question here and then there.
Hi, Tim Egan from the Vermont University. So my question is actually for Ravi and Heather combined. So a lot of folks legislative officials will create programming, and then they'll call up a station and they'll say, can we get access to that? Ravi, what are they allowed to have legally? What do you have to give them? And then Heather, when you agree to give it to them, it can be really complicated. They could say, oh, we want to have all these archives, or we want this or that. How do you manage the process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you're asking about giving them in terms of sort of airtime or in terms of access to your archives?
So after you convince them to either be on a show or come do a show, and then they want to use that because obviously they're going to use it for re-election campaign spots or video.
Got it.
And they want to go, hey, we want to get access to our material. Mm-hmm. And you go, well, it's not your material, it's the station's material. And then they're going to argue with you, and the last thing they're going to do is argue with the legislative.
Yeah.
Who oversees you.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I'm not a media law expert, but I think one thing that you can do when you have people come on the show, they oversee you, but they don't obviously own your organization. You're a standalone organization, and you can, essentially contract with people up front, right? We have in other contexts outside of community TV, there are a surprising amount of intellectual property issues for nonprofits. So, I think when people come in to be filmed or to do a spot or whatever it is, you can have a document that they sign that is just really clear. This is, maybe you want it to be their property, and that's okay. You can have that in there. Or it can say, this is property of, the station. You're not going to be owning it once it's complete. So, that could have the effect of scaring some people away from participating. But I always find in a variety of legal contexts that being clear up front, at least you can say to people, look, you signed this, you read it, that this is what you agreed to.
Mm-hmm. Now, I may be mistaken, but because I've only been on this job for a couple months, a little bit longer than 2 weeks, but not much. My understanding is that we encourage our members to make their content. We help them get it to a level that then can be aired. So if Tommy, it's theirs. Essentially. So if somebody requests that, we provide it. You can have a conversation that says, look, this is going to put us in potentially a situation. So can you just make sure that you edit our logo out if this is going to be used for your reelection efforts? You know, no harm in bringing that up, just so that they understand, you know, what you're concerned about.
Absolutely.
You have to say not on our stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we do the same thing at M&M. Is that we let them have it, and then we just make those observations. Yes, we think they're gonna not use it properly.
Tim, I'll also just share with you that, you know, NALEO's policy is if you are creating content using any of our equipment or in our studios or with our team, none of that can be commercialized. So no one can take the media that's been produced with anything related to NALEO and use it to advance their campaign. That is something that they write off on.
Yeah, and I would just add on that point, like there is a private benefit question also, right? So nonprofits can't use their charitable resources to support private parties. So you know, as a community television, to your point, you shouldn't be using resources and then saying to a politician or anyone else, you know, go ahead, you own this, you can commercialize it, because you know then you're sort of subsidizing them in a sense.
Thank you. I think we have one more question over here.
Comment, little towns, shy officials. I work in one town under 10,000. I live in one half that size, and we're in 2 of 3 towns with a common regional school board. My local League of Women Voters organized a forum with the 3 guys, 2 of them were women, 3 top officials talking to each other about common problems. That might be a way for them to get their issues out without feeling like they're on the spot.
We have a great relationship with the League of Women Voters, and we do so much work for us. We in Minnesota, we love the League of Women.
Who doesn't really?
We have a great partnership with the League of Women Voters of New York and New York City. I guess we'll get one more question right there.
Me? Yes. Okay, cool. So, hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm with High Five Access Media in Avon, Colorado. There are 2 kind of foundational philosophies that I'm encountering barriers with. One is that staff doesn't produce content, producers do, right? So if you don't have community producers doing this stuff, but you still want to make this content, put it on there, how do you navigate that? And then also, PEG Center's foundational philosophy is to be apolitical. So it's very tricky water when you start with one, right? But then when someone else says, oh, the elected official's getting, you know, special treatment or, and so on. So it's like trying to figure out how to navigate those waters of staying true to apoliticalness, but then also engaging the kind of civic engagement that you guys are talking about.
Hey, thank you all. I have one question for the audience, and just by a show of hands, how many of you are involved at all in any statewide policy initiatives to get bills in your state? If you could raise your hand, I'm just curious. Okay. Yep. Thank you. And then there's going to be regional meetings after this. I know New York is getting together today, and then tomorrow, you know, feel free to join us. There's a bus leaving from beautiful Brooklyn to the beautiful Bronx for our tour of BronxNet tomorrow. But thank you all for being here as part of this conference and this panel, and thank you to our panelists. Give yourselves a round of applause, and please enjoy tonight and the rest of this conference. Keep all city and all communities strong. Para siempre.